Welcome into another edition of Region Roundup. I'm James Boyd here with Mike Clark on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, James. I'm kind of amazed we are actually doing it on Monday, which is a little bit of an upset. In recent weeks, you've been kind of bogged down with a bunch of other functions, including getting ready for state football last week and all sorts of COVID updates and wrapping up fall sports and everything else. So it is good that you have a little bit more time this week, and we can get right to it. And first thing, and I know there was a special bonus edition of Region Roundup last weekend, but we're going to cover, I guess, a little bit more in depth on Hobart's first trip to state in 26 years. Awakening the echoes of that great program. And we talked about it a little bit before. It's like I told you, I think, was it last week? I can't remember, the weeks kind of blend together. But, when I came to the region in 1988, Hobart was the gold standard for high school football around here under Coach Don Howell, who succeeded Coach Russ Deal, and the two of them really put Hobart on the state football map. There were some lean years after Coach Howell retired, but Craig Osika, who played for Coach Howell, has kind of got the program back up on top again. And getting to Indy is such a historic milestone, obviously, for that program that was used to making that trip down I-65 pretty frequently and hasn't been down there for a generation, basically. But got down there, kind of a tough afternoon, but I'm not sure if it was in your story, or it might have been in one of the other stories we had, but Zach Vogt, I thought, had maybe one of the greatest quotes of the year, where he said he didn't want to go out like a chump. He wanted to go out like a man. And just, they scored late in the game. And, that's kind of bricky football, basically, is to play until the horn sounds. And, even though, again, the result wasn't what they wanted, but getting back there and playing there kind of established something for this program. And you were there, and you got some more insights.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique situation just because the pandemic kind of jeopardized the season, and for a lot of people, they weren't able to really navigate it due to the pandemic. You had teams that were pulling out of the tournament and teams that were postponing or canceling every week, it seemed like, and not even seemed like, that's just what it was. So to get back there, historically, from a historical perspective, was really cool. First time since 1996. It had been 24 years. And then they were trying to win their first one since 1993, which obviously didn't happen. But there was the historical angle, but then also the, oh my gosh, we made it here during a pandemic angle, which I captured a little bit in my game story. I focused more on, just the historical family ties that a lot of those players have, with fathers playing there, and Riley Johnson is his granddad is Jim Johnson Sr., who's the star pole vaulter and a legend in Hobart. And just about everyone on that team, has an uncle, aunt, an uncle or a father, or a cousin or a brother that played football for the Brickies or played a sport for the Brickies, and it could have been around with their aunt, but it's just that big family atmosphere, and it was awesome to see. When I got down there probably about an hour and a half before my game started, and as I was walking in, they weren't letting fans in for the different games until the fans before cleared out, so the line was pretty long for Hobart fans. They were definitely very faithful, and they stayed to the very end, even though the score was 49-7. After they scored that one touchdown, they just erupted like they had won the game, which was kind of nuts. It was really surreal to see. And I know people kind of preach about that. Oh, we have like this great community, this great family community. But I believe Hobart is not, being cliche when they say that, because, again, you're down 42 points. And actually, at that point, they were down 42-7. And then the ensuing kickoff, Ron Colley ran it all the way back for, a touchdown. So it ended up being 49-7. But, I mean, they were still cheering. Like, when they got their runner-up trophy, Mike, they raised it up and they were cheering like they had won the state final. Like, it was so weird to me. I was like, wow, like, these are some really diehard fans. Maybe more diehard than me and the Chicago Bulls. That's in the story. Or the Bears, for that matter. But it was a good experience, man. I thought that our coverage overall was great. Obviously, we had a lot of help on the, just all hands on deck for that game, and on the copy desk as well, getting all that stuff out to you all. I really didn't sleep last week. I slept yesterday. Really slept yesterday for the first time in probably about 3 weeks. That felt good. So, obviously we got more stuff on the way, but I mean, it was a really cool experience. Just, going down memory lane, learning about Don Howell and learning more about Don Howell and, the era of Bricky football that's kind of just been told in like this mystic and mysterious and this mythic type of conversation. To kind of see that get reinvigorated this time around was really cool. Even had 2 people on the Bricky's team celebrate their birthdays. Play caller Dave Temple and junior defensive lineman Alex Pickett. They both celebrated their birthdays with the state finals appearance, which was really cool. I guess being Facebook friends with Alex Pickett helped me find that story, so that was nice. But yeah, man, it was a good experience. I stayed there probably longer than I needed to, but I figured, hey, you know what? Who knows when you'll be back here, James? Just enjoy it. Don't rush your game story, because you're not on deadline. I finished it pretty early, and then don't, rush through the experience of being there. So I watched the 6A game as well, which also had some region ties. So it was a really good game, really good atmosphere. Obviously not the outcome they wanted, but I mean, the region made it to state during a pandemic, so I think that will be remembered more than the outcome of the game.
For sure, and again, we talked about it throughout the course of the season. We didn't know in August whether we were going to have a season or what kind of a season it was going to be, but Hobart did miss one game. They missed the first Lowell game, which would have probably decided the NCC title. They did get a chance to play Lowell later in the playoffs, but Hobart was probably less affected than most schools by it. We'll talk a little bit more about ongoing COVID effects, because that's pretty much what the pod has been for the last 8 months here.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, another story that you kind of been keeping an eye on over the last couple of years here. Darius Garland, who is the son of Winston Garland, who was a legend when I was here, when I came here again back in the 80s and 90s. Gary Native is playing for the Cavs now. Darius, I'm talking about. And even though he didn't go to high school in the region, he still has very close ties to the region and keeps the region in his thoughts. And you kind of caught up with him. I had a story about that last week, too.
Yeah, so his brother, Desmond Nunnery, hit me up the week of semi-state. I was on my way to cover the Valpo Zionsville semi-state game at Zionsville, and his brother's like, hey, Darius is available for an interview. He remembered me from a story I did previously around the holidays with Darius, and he's like, hey, I like the way you wrote that story. We all liked it. Do you want to talk to him again? And I'm like, driving, and I'm like, sure. So I did an interview on the fly with him in my car on my way to Zionsville. His brother did give me a heads up, when he'd be calling, all of that, so I was able to think of some questions. And basically it was detailing that, first and foremost, he paid for 6 families' groceries for Thanksgiving. And there were 2 in Gary, 2 in Cleveland where he plays, and 2 in Nashville where he played college basketball and where he spent most of his high school days. So again, 6 families. And I told him, I was like, hey, how are you going to pick these 6 families? He's like, well, we're just going to have him and his brother. We're going to pick 2 families in Cleveland. They were just going to walk into a store and pay for 2 random people who were in the store. And the same thing was going to happen in Gary with his aunts, and then in Nashville with his parents. So that was a really cool thing for him to do. And then other than that, we went down just kind of recapping what his experiences were with the pandemic when the season stopped, his rookie year, things he wanted to improve on, his admiration for Derrick Rose. He told me he was a bit starstruck when he played against him for the first time. That was like his I'm in the NBA moment. So that was really cool. I asked him about Eugene German from 21st Century, who starred at Northern Illinois trying to get into the NBA. He said he grew up playing against Eugene German and has a lot of respect for him. Thinks he can be an NBA player. And it was just a fun conversation. And it was kind of funny because, you know, I'm only 24 and Darius is 20. He doesn't even turn 21 until next month. Actually, January. Technically, that's, you know, a day. Tomorrow's December, but yeah, it was kind of funny to talk to a guy who's giving back and doing things, and he can't even have a legal drink. So it was cool. It was fun. I'm hoping to continue to keep that pipeline going between me and you know, professional athletes from the region, as well as our newspaper, just covering anything they do back home, because all that stuff always gets well read, and it's fun to again check in not only for the Thanksgiving stuff, but also, you know, we don't get to talk to them as frequently as we do with these, you know, high school coaches and high school players. So whenever you got a chance to talk to an NBA player, NFL player, you know, you got to say yes, and you got to just get them when you can. So that was a fun experience, and it also led to a pretty ridiculous voicemail I got, Mike. I got a voicemail from a guy who was telling me that I was an idiot for interviewing Darius Garland, who is a cheapskate because he only paid for 6 families and not more. And people make 100 times less than him, but give 100 times more. That was the first of 2 crazy emails I got. And I got another email from a guy who was telling me that my game story about Hobart was terrible because I didn't mention the score. And the score is literally in the first sentence. The first sentence. So I don't know what the problem was for these guys or these men who were kind of pretty nasty in my voicemail, but I could care less. I feel like the majority of the region enjoyed those stories, and obviously the people who were involved with them enjoyed them. That's the goal. So overall, though, it was fun to check in with Darius, and also to subsequently get a email or a voicemail rather that was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, and so we got a little bit of that was a little bit of a preview of coming attractions. Our last item on our agenda today will touch on another big news story of the week that also generated some interesting responses. So stick around for the rest of the pod. Before we get to that, though, we are wrapping up fall sports, and that includes knocking out our players of the year for girls soccer, boys soccer, and girls volleyball. And again, amidst all the other stuff going on, we also got boys basketball starting too. So this is kind of the time of the year when everything is kind of swirling around us. But anyway, yeah, if you want to kind of run down our players of the year, which we unveiled in the paper last week.
Yeah, so for volleyball, we had Haley Melby. She's a junior outside hitter for Munster, committed to Iowa. She had a phenomenal season, led the Munster Mustangs to a runner-up finish at States in the biggest class, Class 4A. The coach of the year was Munster's Brett Bowden. Obviously, making a run to state is a really good way to get your name out there for Coach of the Year. He was selected by Paul Orn. So you can check out both stories on our website. For boys soccer, I don't think there was any surprises on that side at all. Again, they both the coach and the player, Zach Bowser from Chesterton, coach Lucas Sabaja from Chesterton, they were the coach and player of the year on the boys side. Well-deserving, won their second state title in the last 3 years. Won it in dominating fashion, 7-1 over Castle. I was there. I witnessed it, my only boys soccer game of the year, and it was the easiest story I've probably written all year for a game story because it was so lopsided, honestly. It was nuts to think of. Both of them had a phenomenal year. And then for the girls, we had Addie Joyner from Chesterton for the trifecta. She's a phenomenal player, but I focused my story more on what she does in the community as a youth soccer coach for Next Gen Soccer. She's really selfless in that way. Great interview, great person. And I kind of wanted to write more about who she is rather than, how many goals she scored. She ended her career with 113 goals, all-time record at Chesterton, arguably their best player in program history. Led them to a sectional championship. They made it to the regional championship before losing. It was a phenomenal year for Chesterton in general, for fall sports, which Paul Oren wrote a really great story about. They won like 11 postseason trophies in 21 days, something crazy like that. So that was a fun thing to kind of wrap up, and it was hanging over my head for a while. So it's always good to kind of close the door on, fall sports and get ready for, winter sports. Obviously, there's football all area to come up, and player of the year and coach of the year, which I'm working on as we speak. But it was good to wrap up, volleyball, boys soccer, and girls soccer.
And we should mention the girls soccer coach of the year also, probably.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm glad you reminded me. It was Jeff Clapman for Andran. They too made it to a regional championship game. Ended up losing, but they won their 7th sectional championship first since they went to state in 2016. And the reason I selected him was because unlike Chesterton and Valpo, and even some of the small schools like Boone Grove and Covenant Christian, Andran doesn't really have like that star player. They have really good players, but they didn't have any all-state players. And they didn't have like this big, great, grand season. They kind of made things happen in the postseason, was just having some really good team cohesiveness. So I decided that, with the way he coached that team, they probably exceeded expectations. And, like I said, won a sectional championship, avenged their loss last year in the sectional championship against Boone Grove, got back this year, knocked them off. So Jeff Clapman was my coach of the year for girls soccer. I believe it was well-deserved. And he's kind of well-respected around the region, even though he's a Munster grad, 1985. He's 59 through and through. He enjoys representing that program. And he just enjoyed that, his team didn't miss any games because of COVID-19. So, again, it was a crazy year during fall sports to not miss any games, to navigate having players quarantined, and to be up in a regional championship, almost win one, but, ultimately fall. But to win a sectional championship this year was phenomenal. And like I said, it was fun to wrap that up.
And speaking of COVID-19, we have our weekly basketball update, and you have the numbers. I know that today's story, we have Chesterton getting back on the court again. Valpo setting a start date, and Valpo was starting a little bit later, not necessarily because of COVID, but also, and this is kind of an annual thing actually, the teams that go deep into the football playoffs, usually wind up readjusting their basketball schedule so they don't have to have their kids go straight into hoops. But those are two of the bigger names I know, and you got a few more details on that.
Yeah, so Chesterton had been on hold for basically about 2 weeks because one of their players tested positive, according to their principal. And today, on Monday, the 30th, they were able to resume practice at 3 p.m. today, which is obviously a good sign for their season. I confirmed with their AD, or the assistant AD, Tommy Berry, that they'll be back in action. They're starting their season up Saturday against Lowell. They're going to face Lowell at home in the season opener. And then Valpo, as I was writing this story, Valpo's AD, Stacey Adams, sent me an email saying when they were going to start their season. They're going to start their season on the 11th at Lowell. Like you said, they had some turnover for some kids at Valpo playing football, like Cooper Jones and Mason Jones. Two of their better players do play football. They made it to semi-state football, which is the 20th. Today is the 30th. Obviously, they need some time to get acclimated to basketball. And also, you need to have a certain amount of practices in your respective sport as well, which I wasn't even aware of. You have to have a certain amount of practices in place in basketball before you can jump off from football into basketball. So, and then they were also saying they had some COVID-19 quarantine issues. Not a lot from what I was getting from their AD, but enough to basically say, like, hey, let's just wait until we get everybody back. Start our season. So they're going to start up on the 11th. And then North Newton, they had paused all winter activities because of COVID-19 and the cases spiking like crazy in Newton County. They'll actually be back in action today as well, all their winter sports. The girls will be back in action Friday to resume their season for girls basketball. And then boys basketball will be back in action next Saturday. They'll be starting their season off. So a lot of updates on that part. And the last update I had was Marquette girls postponing their game on, I believe, December 2nd. Wednesday, yes. Because of contact tracing, which is their second straight game where they had to, not their second straight game, but their second game this season where they had to stop a game because of contact tracing. And it's just what it is now at this point. I mean, I was even looking at Andrean. They missed the game last week, but it was actually because of Twin Lakes' COVID-19 situation. So every day, like I tell you all on the podcast the last few weeks, you're just waking up earlier than I probably normally would and checking John Hale and checking my email and appreciating when, the schools are forthcoming, like Valpo and Marquette and testing about their situations. That way I keep an eye on things. We have a few more schools that are supposed to resume sometime this week, which I'll try to provide updates on. I promise I'm not just doom and gloom, and I won't just report on when teams are stopped. I'll also try to get you, aware of when schools are starting back up, when programs are playing again. That's the job. I try to be fair in all aspects of that. But, that's the new norm. So just expect these stories to keep coming, basically, until we have vaccines.
Yes, and our final item, as noted earlier, kind of a national story. It is a national story. Sarah Fuller, the goalie for the SEC champ Vanderbilt women's soccer team, kicked off the second half of Vanderbilt's game on Saturday, and she was the first woman to appear in a Power 5 football game. There have been two previous women who played in D1 games, and so it's an interesting story because of the way it was perceived by different people, and I think that you and I certainly took a look at this and said, wow, what a great story, an inspirational story. Vanderbilt was in a tough spot because they didn't have anybody to kick off or to kick PATs or field goals. As it turned out, they didn't have any opportunities to kick PATs or field goals, so the kickoff was the only opportunity she had. But I think a lot of people thought that this was kind of a cool story, and the reason that I want to bring it up and talk about it a little bit is not everybody did feel that way. The Twitter chatter was kind of divided, and I don't know what percentage was on one side and what percentage is on the other side, but there were some people who thought it was who called it a publicity stunt and asked Jason Whitlock, who I don't know how everybody feels about Jason Whitlock, but he actually tweeted, does Vandy have a men's soccer team? Could they have gotten a men's soccer player to do it? Well, Vandy doesn't have a men's soccer team and hasn't had one for 14 years. He could have Googled that to find out, but was really more interested in making a point and scoring some points with a different group of people. And the kind of the backlash, I guess you would say, to this, kind of disappointed me and kind of saddened me a little bit too, because I see it as a pretty positive story, and again, an inspirational story. And then some folks were just trying to say, well, why is this happening? Didn't they have any other kickers on the roster? Couldn't they have gotten somebody? Basically, the point of it was couldn't they have gotten a man to do the job instead of having her do it? And then they were making fun of the fact that it was a pooch kick too, but as it turned out, it was a designed pooch kick. They didn't want to kick it deep and risk a long run back. So, she did what she was asked to do after joining the team, like a few days earlier, literally. She wasn't on the team a week earlier. So, all things considered, I think pretty impressive performance, and apparently she's going to stick with the team. And even though the head coach got fired, Derek Mason, the special teams coordinator, coach, said that she's welcome to stick around and she wants to do that. So, and you had some comments about this as well. And, again, I think we're pretty much on the same page here, but I will let you, give us your thoughts on that then.
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to say, and you mentioned it briefly there, she was not able to attempt any extra points or field goals during that game because they lost 41-0 to Missouri. And the reason I was annoyed with the comments that were extremely sexist, misogynistic, and just downright stupid, was because they were criticizing her for a design squib kick, like you said, a design pooch kick that was successful. It worked. But they weren't criticizing these men. Were not criticizing the rest of the team. That team is a pathetic excuse of a team, period. They lost 41-0. They scored as many points as me and you, Mike. We have never played college football. So that infuriated me because I'm like, why are you all slamming her for doing her job? If they had a semblance of an offense, she would have had a chance to attempt a field goal or, an extra point. But that's pretty hard to do when the rest of the players on the team aren't good at what they do at all. I spoke to Robbie Weinstein, who's a former Times reporter. He's out of Vanderbilt. He covered that whole historic moment for 24/7 Sports. And I told him, I was like, man, they better be lucky I wasn't in that question room or the Zoom call, because I would have straight up asked the coach, hey, what can the other players learn from the way Sarah did her job? Because obviously everybody else is pathetic. That's honestly how I feel about it. And it irritates me because, again, everyone's slamming her. They're like, oh, it couldn't find anybody. She's 6'2", first off. Well, she's bigger than most men in America, and all the ones on Twitter for all that matter. And then number two, she's an SEC champion in girls soccer. She knows women's soccer. Well, she knows what it takes to win. And obviously those guys don't. So if anybody can learn something or do better, or, anybody deserves some type of blame, look at that coach who just got fired, and look at all those players who are sorry. It's simple as that. I rarely get as angry as I do about these things, but I really, and you know how I feel about women, because in my life personally, I feel like I would not be who I am without the women in my life. I've said it time and time again, no disrespect to my dad at all, but the two greatest women in my life are my grandma and my mom. Those are my two greatest role models. My dad's right there at third. But to degrade her and say all this dumb stuff about what she did was just ridiculous to me. She's playing two Division I sports in the SEC, which is two more than 99% of the planet. So there you have it. I can get off my soapbox now, but Sarah Fuller, keep doing your thing. If the NCAA ever wants to actually pay their players and stuff, I would definitely buy a jersey and support her, because like she said, she's an inspiration. And I think that women and girls need to be told and reminded as much as possible they can do anything in this world. We have a woman who just got elected, the first black woman ever as vice president of this country. So, Kamala Harris. So anything is possible when it comes to, what you want to do as a woman. And I never want people to feel like they, I have the right to talk down to a woman, because women, in my opinion, pretty much do everything better than men. Just look at history and, the things that men have done, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I think that does it for us for this week. We appreciate you listening in, as always. Hope everyone had a good holiday, and we'll be back next week. And we can't promise it'll be on Monday, because events sometimes get in the way, but we'll definitely be back. We are on, ever since we made that promise that we're going to be back every week, we have been back every week, so I don't think I'm going to jinx us by saying that. And we will see you again, or talk to you again next week. Thanks, folks.